Allan Parker.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Allan Parker. I'm representing Liberty for the Kids and the Justice Foundation today, of which I'm the president. I'm speaking on behalf of a group of 7 education reform experts and leaders with over 150 years in education reform efforts. Rod Page, former superintendent of HISD and former secretary of education. Don McAdams, a former Houston ISD Board of Trustees superintendent. John Shields, former member of the legislature and the State Board of Education. Myself, former professor of education law. I represented public school districts, and I was designated a hero for children by the State Board of Education after I helped evaluate the open enrollment charter school program, which was the last major school reform effort we had in Texas, creating new kinds of schools. Sandy Kress, a Democrat, former president of Dallas ISD Board of Trustees. Kent Grusendorf, House Public Education Committee Chairman. So the letter's been given to you. The time for having hope in politics per usual is gone. It's time we move the action away from the unsteady world of bureaucracy and government and toward the parents of our kids in Texas. The best form of accountability is parental choice. Every parent should have the freedom to choose the school that best serves their child's needs, whether it's public or private, whatever works for their children. Many families choose back and forth between the two. And the most reliable people in whom taxpayers can place the greatest confidence are the parents. We've come to the conclusion that the education system does not need to be protected from freedom of choice. The system needs to be exposed to freedom and allow universal school choice for parents as the only true accountability system that can improve public education for all students. This is not about letting some leave. It's about making every school a school of accountability, public and private.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator West. To Allan Parker.
To Allan Parker, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Do you think we should have some transparency in the system? Here's the deal. And you are renowned in terms of your work and things like that. We know that vouchers have its genesis in racism. You agree with that? I mean, when they first started, it started right after Brown versus Board of Education, did it not?
Right, back when a lot of Democratic politicians were opposing desegregating the public schools. I'm sorry,
Okay,
I just want to speak the truth.
we'll let Senator West finish his question.
I'm sorry, and I won't say that again.
I don't care whether they're Democrats or Republican, it was racism, right?
Neither do I. Yes, it was racism,
all right,
absolutely.
so it has its genesis in racism.
Yes.
Okay. And we don't want to resegregate schools, so shouldn't we have transparency as it relates to who's taking advantage of this? What I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have different numbers, that's fine. I understand that 67% of students that take advantage of these types of programs throughout the United States are Anglo. And it seems like we're resegregating our schools. Help me with that.
I think that's absolutely untrue. I don't have the data at my fingertips. I know I thought making things transparent would help reform the public schools. That's why we. No, excuse me.
I'll do respect.
We have Fort Worth ISD is institutionally racist
I am
today.
asking you questions. I'm asking you the question.
Yes.
Hang on.
Okay.
You asked me,
Well,
did I think we should have transparency?
Mr.
I'm answering
Allan.
that question.
No, the question I asked you: should we have transparency in these voucher programs? That's the question I asked you, sir.
And the answer is transparency will not fix the problem, so we need it to be transparent to the parent only. That's my answer to your question. The parent needs to know if their child is doing well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your response.
Senator Menendez.
Mr. Parker, so in your testimony, I think you're trying to allude that if we pass this bill, it will provide more parents whose children are currently in public schools the ability to go to a private school. Is that the thesis?
Yes, most of the students that take advantage of this will be probably in public schools going to private schools.
How do you define most? Is there a percentage?
Well, I think the limit is 10%, I think, under the bill, if I understand it.
No, the limit is not currently 10%. It doesn't cap 10%. It says after that. Well, would it surprise you that in Iowa, Missouri, Florida, Indiana, Wisconsin, Arizona, New Hampshire, and Arizona, no more, the highest percentage of students that have come from public schools is 40%. In Arizona, only 5% didn't come from public schools. They were already in private schools. So to me, it seems like the argument that we're trying to save kids trapped in failing public schools is not really valid unless we do something that eliminates the ability for those who are already in those private schools.
I can't ask you questions, so I won't.
Sure.
Every Texas child has the right to a free, publicly funded education.
Correct.
It does not have to be provided in a government school. We crossed that in 1995 when we created charter schools, which are run by nonprofit corporations with non-governmental employees. We can now cross the bar there further because the United States Supreme Court has even said that failure to include religious schools is a denial of the free exercise of religion. It is not an establishment of religion, as it might have been thought in 1995 when school choice started. But school choice, the Supreme Court in 2005 upheld the Cleveland voucher program, and it has also now, last year, said the state may not exclude religious schools from the programs without it being a denial of the free exercise, and every child in Texas has a right to a free, publicly funded education. It does not have to be funded or given to them by a government employee in a way that violates their freedom of religion.
Mr. Parker,
Senator
I
Menendez.
understand your response, but I don't think it was a response to my question, because the issue was that the kids who are currently in these, quote, trapped kids in public schools aren't the ones attending in other states the private schools. And
Well, I
that's the
disagree
issue.
with that. Most of the studies.
Let him finish his
Okay,
question.
sorry.
But the
didn't mean to-
statistics are the statistics. We can talk anecdotally all we want, but if they can show us proof, Arizona, of the 61,689 students enrolled in their voucher program, only 462 previously attended a rated D or F school. That's 0.7 of Arizona's voucher recipients. 0.7, sir. So we must tread carefully if we're going to make the statements that, yes, I agree, we should give every family an opportunity, but we've heard that the $8,000, one, won't cover the full tuition. Two, it does not guarantee acceptance into a private school. And so there's reason after reason. And three, when I've asked, would you be willing to take something that says you can't discriminate against students, I've been told no. So this is not necessarily going to be available to all schools and currently trapped in public schools, which I believe they're not. Thank
Is that
you.
a question? Thank you.
No.
Thank
May-
you,
I was
Mr.
gonna
Parker.
say, may I answer all the questions in
No,
that?
he really did. That was a comment, so we'll go on, but thank you. Senator Bittencourt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's slow down a little bit and let's cover some ground that I think we need to talk about. We have a complicated distribution system of education in the state, do we not? We have public schools, we have charter public schools, we have private schools, we have parochial schools, we have an enormous increase in through COVID in homeschooling, do we not?
Yes.
And all of this is pointing to the fact that the 6 million plus children in the state are already being taught by a whole variety of different market channels. Allan, you want to comment on that?
Yes, as I say, in 1995, the state took a big step forward to encourage more choice, because more choices are generally good for everybody. Even in a special needs circumstance, if you have a choice of a public school and a full federal program of IDEA protection, if that's what you need and that's producing a good school and a good environment for your child, you'll stay there. On the other hand, I've represented children with special needs, I was represented school districts. A due process hearing does not always answer the student's needs. It's one form of accountability. I'm not opposed to it, but letting the child go to a specialized school that deals with that child's needs, if that's what the parents thinks is best for that child, both options should be available. We're not saying they shouldn't be.
Right, and that's the special needs bill I carried in the last session. I think that's a moral imperative that we allow families that need help to get help. Now, when you look at the legislation that Senator Creighton has before us now, you made a comment about what you believe the Texas Constitution and what you believe the our mission is by the legislature and educate kids. So I want you to repeat it again and go through it.
Yes, you're supposed to be providing a general diffusion of knowledge to the people of Texas through a suitable and efficient system of public free schools, not free public schools in the generally sense known today. That language may sound a little archaic, but the first group of schools in Texas was any group of parents could start a community school, they called it, and apply to the state for reimbursement based on student enrollment. And from there, since all government does have a tendency to become centralized and bureaucratized in human experience, it's become more centralized and more bureaucratized over time,
Great.
just human nature. And then in 1995, the Justice Foundation sued the state of Texas in the fourth round of Edgewood 4 litigation, because once the money was equalized, and I do believe in equalized funding, Edgewood per pupil spending is roughly equivalent to Alamo Heights per pupil spending. It comes from different sources, but it's the per pupil spending's roughly equalized in Texas. I know there's some variations, but we've gone through that battle. We've got equal funding per student, and it should be per category of student, because some students are more hard to educate than others. But now it's time to go into the real accountability. I'm going to be very blunt, and I don't mean to offend at all, and this is very hard for y'all to say because you have to get elected. But our accountability system is really a failure and a fraud. It makes people look good, and we want to, for example, reading and writing, one would think are essential functions of a school. The school teachers would want to teach reading, writing, and math. But roughly average, it varies from like 48 to
Allan, I hate to
52%.
interrupt,
I'm
but
sorry,
I've got to get back
half
to
the
the
children
bill,
in the
please.
Texas schools cannot read or do math at grade level. That is massive
let's-
failure. And,
Senator
and
Bittencourt.
racism is still in the public schools in
Allan,
Texas.
one second. Question specifically, let's do just a
Right.
question,
So,
because
Allan, right.
Thank you.
Allan,
he's
sorry,
got a
can't
lot of
let you-
information.
Yes,
and
I
we-
understand.
guide-
And I don't want to abuse
On
anybody's
Western
time.
civilization. Okay, I want to go back to this. Now, now, on a funding basis, okay, I just want to make sure that you agree. We have about a 25% increase if we used SB2 from yesterday over the last biennium. And we're now talking about an additional $500 million of that. Is that an adequate pilot program, given the fact that we would be the 31st state to have school choice and the 10th to look at ESAs, in your opinion?
It is a very good pilot program. I support it for that reason, but I have some hesitancy because you've inoculated the public schools from suffering any financial impacts if parents leave their schools. So there will be not much of an incentive to improve the schools, but there'll be some, and that's a good thing. And the students that do get to leave will be immediately better.
Okay.
But if a lot of students leave, then the administrators say, what's wrong? They start fixing the
Okay.
problems. That's what happens all across the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you.